the society, how society classify people by birth lottery, they are judged by only gender identities. Okay, the secondary, without this concept, how the society will be better, the world will be better. Okay, but before that, gender identity means the concept that men have to be stronger, or the women, no thank you, women have to be protected, or this kind of concept in the society.
Clarification.
Okay.
Masculinity and femininity is merely a concept of gender itself, not the gender identity engaged with emotion.
Okay, I will go up later. In the status quo, every person have to act as how they have to meet expectation from the gender. However personality they have, they ignore them. They have to. They are sold as whether they are women or men. They are judged by only the gender identities. That is the problem of the society. And for example, in case of women, they have to. They tend to engage in the houseworking, or some. It's a practical harm. It is problematic in the first place. Unfortunately, in case of women, they tend to be regarded as the weaker portion as compared with the men. It is a problem of the society. It is women have to be regarded as the existence. They have to be protected or something like that. For example, in company, the women have difficulty in taking leadership in the first place. So in society, in the company, unfortunately, the male-oriented society in the first place. So these cases, the women are regarded as because they are women, so they cannot do well in the job or something like that. In case of government official, or the women tend to have difficulty in getting a job or a job, something like that. In case of the president or the politician, they have difficulty in getting these jobs. So, moreover, in not only women, of course, they also male. They have difficulty in society. So, in the case of male, they have to be stronger, or compared with women, they have to act as men. So the men have difficulty in getting job, or like cabin attendant or the counselor or something like that. The male tend to be things that, so that the male should not have these jobs or something like that. Even moreover, if the male people have to get together, or they have to be stronger position. This concept is strongly problematic in the first place. Even if they do not want to do so, they have to do so. It is the first choice. It's a very problem of the status quo. More than that, we say the LGBTQ people is also problematic. These people do not have to become. They do not want to probably whether both position in the first place. So after taking without this concept, these people will be helped. Sure, have helped. Okay. So without this concept, every person have paid attention to as individuals in the first place. So then every person will be evaluated equally. So they are the more people tend to pay attention to personality. Without gender identities, the man no longer to be the man no longer have to take have to be strong, or the women can take leadership or something like that. More than that, LGBTQ people do not have to worry about the gap between the social expectation or they themselves or not, or something like that. For these reasons, we are very proud to propose.
Thank you for your remarks.
Unfortunately, there exists a clear barrier or distinction between sex, and it's gender identity that has helped it to be overcome. We think the world without the concept of gender identity is really discriminatory and harder for some individual. So that's the reason why we'd like to oppose. In my speech, two things to tell you as a leader of opposition. Firstly, I'd like to analyze why the concept of gender identities are necessary, and secondly, I'd like to analyze why taking this motion brings worse scenario. But before moving on to my cases, some rebuttals against the argument. Firstly, we don't think gender identities are always some kind of discriminatory. We think gender identity is something which is particular to sex, some kind of identity shared by that sex. And moreover, they argue that personality under the status quo, personality is ignored because of gender identity. But we think that is really unrealistic context, because looking at the status quo, not equally, but every individual are to great extent evaluated by personality, and it is quite unrealistic for the side of us to say that each individual are evaluated by their gender in the first place. And more we say, even if admit that there exists some kind of barrier for some individual, we think it is gender identity that can help it to overcome. Why is that? Because looking at the status quo, for example, feminist movement has actually helped women to improve the situation, and precisely it is thanks to gender identity to share the same perspective and to share the goal, that's to say to improve their position. So what we can see is that like gender identity actually can help this group to uplift them as a whole. So we think rather in order to achieve their goal to make individual evaluated equally and their personality, we think rather these things are really essential. Having clarified our rebuttals against the argument, moving on to my first issue, which is the analysis why the concept of gender identities are necessary. In the first place, ladies and gentlemen, we think by nature there should exist a difference between men and women, or transgender, or gay, or those people. For example, it is quite clear that men run faster than women, or women bear baby while men don't, right? So that's the reason why we think, because there is a clear distinction or clear difference between men and women or transgender. The concept of gender identity itself has been made in order to compensate these differences. And we think thanks to gender identities, thanks to gender identities, we think if we continue the status quo, the situation is going to be much better for each individual in the society, even if admitted that there might be some discrimination under the status quo. Why is that? Because because women, for example, can be united thanks to the sharing gender identities. For example, looking at the status quo, feminists thanks to gender identities and thanks to the unity caused by gender identity, feminist movement has been successful in order to protect the right of women. And we think united as a group is really beneficial in order to protect the setting group's benefit. So that's the reason why we think because of uniting as a group, men, women, or transgender or those kind of people, other groups can protect their benefit. For example, looking at the history, black men actually has been achieving their purpose to protect their right thanks to uniting them as a group. So that's the reason why we think gender identity is really essential in order to protect their benefit. Moving on to my second issue, why taking this motion brings about worst scenario. So we think after taking this motion, what's going to happen is that gender identities are going to disappear from this world. We think, which means that people within this society are going to face the reality that's to say the difference or distinction which is existing under the status quo. And for example, as we have told you, men are running faster compared to women, or men don't bear baby compared in comparison with the fact that women don't bear baby. So what's going to happen is that because there is no gender identity, which has been protecting the individual within the society, what's going to happen is that firstly it's easier for other sex to demand one particular sex or particular group to do the things that individual cannot actually do. For example, men can say why don't you run faster compared to why don't you run faster as we are, or those kind of things. And second, we believe these individuals who cannot actually fulfill the same thing compared to other sex are going to be in a strong dilemma caused by physical differences, all those kind of things. No, thank you. So that's the reason. I'm sure.
So I do the same POI as CEO. So the difference is you can distinct by the gender or sexuality. So why do you have to do it by the gender identity?
Because gender identity is a concept to unite the gender as such, so we think it is quite necessary in order to achieve the equality of the society. So moving back onto my argument. So what's gonna happen is that this individual is going to face a strong and serious dilemma. So that means this society as such is going to be a society which is controlled by physical differences because of the discrimination caused by that. Because there is no protection, that's to say the gender identity existing under our society. So that's the reason why I think being evaluated equally or being evaluated by personality that has been said by the side of us will never be achieved in our paradigm. So that's the reason why we think taking this motion as such is so serious. So that's the reason why we like to oppose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll talk about mainly one thing. What is the gender identity and how it's harmful for the individual? The unnecessary classification of the personality, for example, like gender, sex. Before that, I want to refute to the previous speaker. I have 4 rebuttals. The first 3, the previous speaker has said gender identity is shared by every individual, shared by the people, but he said the personality is ignored, the situation the personality is ignored is unrealistic. But as I told you before, so we know the situation the people have tendency to think about the personality as much as possible, but in the status quo there are huge strong the norm shared by the people and tend to be imposed by the society's pressure, tend to be imposed by the other people, even the family. This is the gender identity in the fact the personality is evaluated less than the gender identity. This is the status quo. And they said, like, they asserted it. There's no reason, so do not take this point. And secondly, they said, like, the feminist, for example, like feminist movement, there are many benefits because of the unity, but it's rather it's not true, and it's rather harmful for the every sex, because like because I would say like the problem like for example like feminist movement is trying to solve is caused by the gender identity, like for example like there's no right to vote or something like that. In this situation, there's no benefit because of the gender identity, because the problem itself is caused by the gender identity, and rather counterproductive, because this kind of the unity, this kind of unity is a radicalized conflict between the gender identities, because the people have the tendency to when they unite, they have the common enemy to defeat. Like for example, like for women, they have in many cases they stigmatize the men who have dominate the society, who have disturbing the self-actualization of the women. In this situation, for example, some feminists like for example, like women, they have the tendency to do radical action to the society, sometimes which cause many conflict or many problems in the society. Even to the people, even though they do not have any discriminative idea to those people because of. Just because they are men, so even though they do not have the discrimination on the women, or even though they do not have the masculinism or something like that, they can be the target of this radical action of those feminist movements. So it's rather problematic in the status quo. And thirdly, they say like because of the gender identity, there are many benefits, like so the classification of the international sporting event, like men can run faster, so we can distinguish the kind of the game, but without gender identity, we can achieve this progress because we can just classify but because of the statistics, they like so generally men run faster. So it is the statistics, because this is not gender identity. So because of that, we can achieve the equality, equality regardless of the birth lottery thing. So this is ideal situation for each sex. Yes.
The world without gender identity actually existed 50 years ago or something like that. In this year, gender inequality between male and female was worse than right now, where there is a concept of gender identity. How do you explain this contradiction?
Sorry, I don't think so. Yes, I'm going to talk about what's gender identity, how harmful it is for each sex. The gender identity is the concept that most people unconsciously are forced to have, which is that like women should be like that, the men should be like that, like this. And in many cases, they tend to impose on other people for their next generation, because they are raised by this kind of concept, and also in many cases they tend to be imposed by the other family or something like so those people. So the being imposed by these the close people is very harmful or very shocking for each individual, because even though they want the men want to be the cabin attendant, because of men so you shouldn't it's not suitable for you. So this is very harmful for each individual. So just because of the sex, there's no possibility they can achieve their the dream, and also the gender identity is like it's delaying the change of the system because of the damaging incentive to voice out the problem, because it's natural for the people who believe these kind of concept. So it's also harmful for each individual who have the different image for the individual. So we are proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. Next.
Thank you, Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen. So far, the government side have consistently shown the problem between caused by the difference of the gender. So like if you are born in a woman, or like when you are receive some kind of you are in a circumstance, or like you are in a bad circumstance, so like they totally lack the explanation why, especially the concept of the gender identity hinder the certain gender from the certain opportunity, or like for like getting job. So like what that is the explanation coming from that will be provided from the opposition, opening opposition. Firstly, so why the world not considering gender as a concept, even though there's an absolute difference in the gender, so it's so burdensome for each of the gender. And secondly, so like why their side of the goal, the government side's goal, can more successfully achieved by taking this motion. I'll explain in 2 points. Before moving on, I'll explain in a bit of a So like, as I said in my introduction, so like they so far they only show the problem of the people who receiving by born in a certain gender. So like because you were born in a woman, you cannot get a job. So like that is a problem of the gender, not the problem of having the concept of the gender identities. And secondly, so like they've shown the problem of the birth lottery. So like it is a certain fact that every people has a birth lottery. So like people who cannot listen can go to special schools, or like people are good at sports, like go to athletes. So like there are birth lotteries. There's a factor of birth lottery in the present situation. Not if it was not gender. So like they couldn't show that why, especially the gender identity will hinder them from receiving certain opportunities, and this will be shown in my speech. Okay, firstly, why the world not considering the gender as a concept is so burdensome? Because, as my partner explained, so like it is totally different, and also the opposite side, government side, is conceding that it is totally different in men and women. So like first place, they are the physical opportunity is totally different, and secondly, so like the way of thinking is totally different. So like my partner explained, like the woman can take more good care of child, or like man is more physically strong. So like there is a total difference, but mixing up those kind of two different types of people is so burdensome to people. So like I want you to remind of the example of like some decades ago, like there's a gender difference from those kind of years, but there was no concept of gender identity. So like there were severe discriminatory to those women, and it is why it is so burdensome to like have no such identity is there is 2 points. First, you will have no sense of or like belonging. So like you think that you will have no supporters at all. You don't think that you belong in some certain groups. Like I want to think about the example of LGBT people. So like these are people who have suffered by certain identities. So like they weren't understood as a different identity. So like they didn't have gender identity themselves. So like that is so problematic because they thought that they were no supporters. Like there were no like they think that if there was no concept of LGBT, so like they think that there is no supporters, they will not have a sense of belonging. That is so burdensome for themselves. They will never achieve like knowledge or like recognition from the society. So that is really problematic in the first place. And secondly, what it is like as achieving identity, you can that is a platform of like unite as a group. So like thinking of the feminist movement, they successfully achieved rights. Like women have achieved right in the history because they have united as the same identity. So like they have thought that they are in the same group. So that is why they have step by step achieved their rights a little later. And like in the LGBT case, in the modern society, they are step by step achieving recognition, or they know that they have a certain identity of LGBT. So that is the platform of achieving rights, and this is totally different, problem in the world not taking this motion, because you abolish the idea of the difference of that you are a woman or like you are a man. So like you lose the opportunity to win your right. That is so burdensome. And before moving on to the second point, go.
So why would the gay people be discriminated in your paradigm when people doesn't think that there's a gender identity in the first place?
So in my paradigm, there is a gender difference, and that is why they will achieve identity, and they will be they can protect their rights. And moving on to my second point, why they will be the same? Why we especially in the opposite side, we can achieve the rights of those people who belong in a certain identity. So first, admitting that you belong in one identity, admitting that you are a woman or like you are a man, you are first will achieve the sense of belonging, like you are belong in the same group, so like you will have a relief, you have a support. So like that is in the first goal we have to achieve to fight as a group to achieve rights. So that is so the concept of a woman have arose from a lot of decades ago. So there is a feminist movement, and they have achieved right from long days ago to this modern society. So like they have the rights compared to like LGBT people who are the only a few of the members of the society only recognize those people. So like first, thinking themselves as belonging in a certain identity is like will provide the relief or like mental support. That is really that is very advantageous. And secondly, so like as I explained, so like achieving the same identity. For the first time, you can unite by achieving the identity. So like the people in the same country will unite like to fight to another country. So like thinking that you belong in one identity will like provide you the unity or like the force to fight against another identity. So like the women, the feminist movement have achieved rights towards the women, men, or like the whole society, because they thought they are in the same group. They are united strongly by the same identity that they are women. So to protect, to like achieve the goals coming from to like solve the problems between the gender absolute difference, we are totally proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, what we're going to do as a closing comment we are going to more focus on gender identity, not gender. So what we are going to what we believe is like what individuals think and what individuals think that they belong to one kind of identity. So we believe it's strongly connected to what people actually choose. We believe that like when people are going to choose by their gender, the gender identity, we believe that's when the harm starts. So before moving on to my argument, several rebuttals to the opening opposition. First of all, as I have pointed out, they didn't really talk about the gender identity, not about what they believe in the first place, right? So we believe in that cases, their argument is not relevant in this debate, but also even if that's related to this debate, we believe that like their harm doesn't start in the first place, because we believe there are no need to get united when there is no gender identity, right? When everybody think that there is, when everybody don't think about the gender identity, that means that like everybody, no one think that it's abnormal for men to love men or so forth, right? So there is no discrimination in the first place, right? So what kind of problem they have to solve by uniting in the first place, right? We believe in that cases, opening opposition cases doesn't stand in the first place. So so my argument. So I have three arguments to talk about. Firstly, how gender identity impacts people's decision making. Secondly, how how that harms the situation, how that makes the harmful situation, and lastly, what kind of identity people should have and how people should make choice by them. So first argument about how gender identity impacts people's decision making. As opening comment have said, we believe that like people are choosing their gender identity from the very beginning of their life. We believe it's not something that people can control. So we believe when people have born as women or men, we believe people people's decision making disturbed by gender identity for two reasons. Firstly, about their parents. We believe that like, from the very young ages, people are strongly impacted from their parents, right? And in most of the cases, your parents are women and men, which means that like your best role model are women, like men and women, which is also has a strong gender identity or so forth, right? So we believe in the next generations, this kind of gender, the strong norm against the gender identity will be passed on and again. And that's why we believe people's decision making will be disturbed by that kind of things. Before we go, yes?
Yes, that's also part of gender, concept of gender itself, right? Because it's gender that women have to become housewife, right? It's not about gender identity, you knife yourself.
No, wait. What I'm saying is how gender identity is actually built up. I'm going to say why that kind of gender identity is harmful later on. So yes, people have to build a gender identity in that way. And secondly, like people, there's tons of people, right? We believe that 50% of the number are actually women or men, which means that people are strongly influenced by this kind of concept of gender in the first place, right? We believe that people build up the kind of gender identity in the way when people are moving in the same way. You would think that you have to act in the same way. We believe this kind of situation is extremely harmful. Which is my second argument. Why that makes the harmful situation? Firstly, we believe that it is extremely difficult for the people to actually get outside of that kind of gender norms and like choose to do something different, right? For example, maybe as a man you want to raise your children, but it's that kind of thing is extremely difficult, not because of the society, but because of yourself. Maybe because you don't know about the other role models, or like because you think that because you're a man, you should not do that kind of things. It will be an extremely big pressure for these people to actually make that kind of choice. We believe even if that kind of things might be a best, could have possibility to make the best happiness for these people, we believe that kind of situation happens. But second of all, we believe there's a ton of people who cannot realize their best choices because of the gender identity, right? Maybe there's many women who, if she study STEM education for a lot, maybe she can be a great scientist or so forth, right? But she cannot realize that because she thinks that like she is a woman and she is not the one who studies STEM education and so forth, right? We believe that like even if that could have made him extremely happy and like that could have like make her extreme in a very famous position or so forth. We believe that if she cannot realize that kind of things and live as in different way, we believe in that cases like we are going to harm the potential choices and she could not achieve the best happiness of her life. And lastly, how people will build their identity in our paradigm and why that's better. So the kind of identity we want to focus on is that like something that you can identity that you can control. For example, I study information technology and I feel the belonging to this kind of society. We believe that kind of thing identity is something that you can choose. And what we oppose is something you cannot control, right? For example, like your gender, your races, or something like that. We believe that kind of thing is that kind of identity is better in two ways. Firstly, because when you're young and when you're going to build up your identity, we believe that you are actually choosing that kind of identity. For example, like I feel like going to study STEM, go to Tokodai, because I thought that like I am good at math than literacy or so forth, right? Maybe in that case, you can actually choose your identity by something you're good at, right? Second of all, we believe that it's completely easy to change your identity when you think that you're not good at these kind of things, because maybe I realize that one day I'm not good at maths, then I can study literacy in that way. We believe that kind of things that is impossible when you're going to choose in something you cannot control. You cannot change your gender from male to female, and which means that you cannot make your best choices if once you are born as men. We be comparatively, like the identity that will be built up in our paradigm is comparatively better, and like we're going to make people's happiness because we believe that it will be more easier to find your best answer to your life and so forth. Maybe in that cases we are happy to propose. Thank you.
Let's make a couple things clear. This debate is not about gender. This debate is about gender identity. And gender is just merely about a state of male or female. It continues to remain on their side of the house. Discrimination accrues from the gender still exists even on the government side of the house. The important thing here is gender identity is an agency of individual to associate themselves with particular gender.
Yeah.
Male or female is just about gender, but associating myself to male is gender identity. That is a construction identity, and that is uniquely brought to the closing opposition, clarified by closing opposition, and opening half are just never ever touched this item. This is crucial because all the arguments in opening half were completely irrelevant, ladies and gentlemen. What also explained is discrimination accrues from because society thinks a particular person as male or female. That is about gender, not the individuals associating themselves as particular gender, ladies and gentlemen. Opening opposition also talk about like feminist movement and things like that, because however, but they stand for female in general gender, and rather than not woman, individual woman. And secondly, even male can become a feminist in the very first place. That is not surrounding, that's this particular movement of feminist movement are not mobilizing around a particular individual which associate themselves in gender identity, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, obviously this debate comes to a closing half. So anyway, I'm going to talk about three things. Firstly, what is the difference of sex and gender identity? Why the external pressure continues to remain even on the government side of the house? And secondly, why having gender identity, why individuals associating themselves particular gender is better off their self-empowerment, self-acceptance whatsoever. And thirdly, in societal level, how we change the discriminational structure. So, before moving on that brief response to the closing opposition, they say that gender identity nonetheless imposed by the society. Three responses. Firstly, society recently becomes very sensitive to the gender imposition of particular gender in the very first place. We're having a feminist movement. We're having not feminist movement. We're having a gender-neutral thought published by many companies in the very first place. And we are also not. We have some countries actually banned to this commercial, regulated commercial which specifically targeted particular gender in the very first place, especially to childhood. And secondly, gender is diverse. You can be like yuru fua, kawaii keijoshi, and at the same time you can be the STEM rikeisho in the very first place. That is not something you cannot choose. You can as individual choose, ladies and gentlemen. Your agency are not want to be erased in the very first place. So first off, why discrimination continue on the side of us, even though they erase the concept of gender identity. So the thing is, firstly, that all the argument they talk about, no thank you, is just about just predicate on about gender and not individual associating themselves a particular gender. However, let's take their definition. Even though that definition is wrong, however, let's assume that any concept of gender, like general gender, even though that is not relevant, erased uniquely on the side of the house. But firstly, in the very first place, all the discrimination against women is created from the very, very ancient age. It is created from the Victorian era, even though at that point of time there was no concept about gender in academia. However, the people still think that women should be worse enough. Women should be should go home, should go and work for home or for their family. Because therefore, all the discrimination they talk about is accrued from the sex difference, then not about the gender in the very first place. And secondly, more importantly, difference of biological sex set down. It should be nonetheless remain on their side of us. So Thus, therefore, when people see a woman who are masculine or who are keen on their job career, society see this woman as outsider because they are not girlish, they are not womanish, as they are not following the sex, not even though they do not have a concept of gender in the very first place. Therefore, society nonetheless discriminates you based on sex, based on the biological difference. And that's part of this. That specific discrimination was uniquely done, even though we were in ancient age. We think our argument is more likely to persist. Yeah.
Don't you think the concept of gender identity is unconscious overgeneralization of people, including himself or herself? If yes, why can you say our argument is irrelevant? If no, please explain why.
What? Like unconscious generalization? I don't just get it. So secondly, why we better off individual? So, firstly, gender identity. As I already told you before, even on the side of the house, like society expect you to follow the role that is assigned to your sex. We think at that point of circumstance, gender identity is important because simply, sex is not something you can choose, but gender identity is you can choose, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, the society, unique on this side of the house, society expect you, society want to be you as woman or a girl. However, on their side of the house, society expects you woman. However, society understands you have a mean to identify yourself as female, as feminine, or whatsoever, less feminine woman, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, and moreover, you yourself can't understand yourself like I am a woman, however, I can be a male-ish, or I am a woman, however, I am less feminine. So this kind of understanding is fundamentally important. Well, in three aspects. Firstly, in the very first place, external pressure would diminish, ladies and gentlemen. Because society now understands you, like you're a woman, however you're a male. All these kind of circumstances and this impacts on family conversation or social structure whatsoever in the very first place. Secondly, you as an individual can have more agency to choose life choice, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are just blindly brainwashed about the concept of sex or biological feature, you now have you cannot choose about the choices that is not fit into your sex, that is visual for your body. However, on the other side of the house, I am a female, I am biologically a woman. However, I can be less feminine. Therefore, all these individuals go to the STEM facility in the very first place. So thirdly, more importantly, when it comes to sex, which is totally forget about it. We have to recognize sex is not follow the ideal gender of individual. That is to say, transgender person. So uniquely on their side of the house, these kind of people are continues to be victimized. We think that is problematic. Thirdly, how we can change the society. So as I already told you before, if we have society have both concept of gender identity and the sex, society can be more benevolent. However, on their side of the house, society only have a mean to understand the individual action, individual behavior, individual life choices based on the simple metric of sex. Uniquely on their side of the house, in movements such as ridicule the roles of masculinity or ridicule laws that is predicated on the biological male, we think that is problematic because there is no discourse, no movement whatsoever. We think that's also problematic for all reasons. Uniquely clarify what is gender identity, not a general gender. We win this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this.
Mr. Speaker, our side shows that why such a gender identity itself is bad, something should be removed from our. This is the unique contribution from our side, and we show that why that identity itself is bad, not just the gender itself. So I want to talk about mainly two things. Firstly, I want to rebut against such a closing opposition. Why such a gender identity itself is bad, and why. And secondly, even if we take opposition side such an argument like talking about such a physical, because there are some physical differences, so they should unite each other, but something like that. I want to rebut against that point, and why opposition argument, even if we take and that is relevant, why that doesn't stand. So I want to talk about one by one. Firstly, okay, already want to integrate my speech. So firstly, closing opposition says that because firstly they rebut against our side, like. Even in their paradigm, for example, some gender-neutral movement try to improve such a situation. But we believe that, firstly, it took very long time. We believe that, and also we believe that that's always successful. And so we couldn't understand why that can be always successful. And moreover, we say that my partner will just show you because, for example, that girls share the gender identity with their mother. Therefore, they follow that mother, and we that cannot be sort of improved even in the past. Even such a gender neutral movement try to say, but still because they share that identity, therefore they will follow such a mother. We that problem. The problem from our side still stand, and therefore we still some problem still exist in their paradigm. And okay, let's revert against that side. What they say is that even gender identity they can choose such a for example, even I am man, still I can choose as the gender as woman. But first of all, it's very difficult for them to choose such a gender identity, because even still, unfortunately, even in under some discrimination or such, even if, for example, if I am one but I want to choose a gender identity as woman, but still it's a bit difficult for them to choose that, because other people say that other people will deny that identity, or still they will not treat them as the woman. Therefore, still that is very difficult for them, and therefore point. It's very alias, no thank you. And what they say, then even if we take that point, and it is difficult for them, but what they say is that they say that this harmful for three reasons. Firstly, I only get two reasons. Firstly, because some people are forced to take not suitable choice for them, and secondly, they say that some people are suffering from some harm because of biological difference. But first of all, we couldn't understand why they should have such a gender identity to say. Even if they don't have gender identity, for example, if they want to have a baby, of course we government side support that choice, because they have freedom of choice. That choice should be supported regardless of such a they have a gender or something like that. That totally irrelevant and that totally unnecessary. But unfortunately, if there are some gender in that situation, if some people who don't therefore, the point is that we cannot see the necessity of gender itself. Even if they don't have gender, if they want to have a baby, some people cannot have a baby because of some problem. In that situation, we government help by in each cases. That is totally unnecessary. They have to show why that gender sharing such a gender is so important. Okay.
By your logic, any identity construction is forced by the society and external influences. Do you wish the world without knowing identity at all? If so, what's the justification?
I will be with that. First of all, my partner already showed you to what extent identity should be recognized. We believe if they can choose by themselves and by freely, in that stage, like for example, I went to Tokyo Institute of Technology, well, that is totally okay. But the point is that, no thank you, about sexual identity, they cannot choose freely, and at least they have to force to opt in that identity when they get birth. Therefore, this is the problem, and this is different. No thank you. Therefore, this is the problem. The point is that we couldn't see from and all the opinion side why they have to share such a gender identity. We couldn't understand this point, and therefore we believe the problem for the side can be solved even in our paradigm. We believe that even if we don't see the gender identity, even if we don't see such an identity itself, we can help such a people. No thank you. By each case, therefore that is not so problematic. So let's move on to last argument about open opposition. Even if we take open opposition, we still win this debate, because we believe first of all they say that there are some physical differences. But first of all, this is not absolute. There are some people who want to get some, for example, there are some exception from even if they don't get suited to that physical difference. For example, even if for example, woman, but of course she runs faster than the man. In that situation, we believe that such an exception cannot be helped in their paradigm, because they cannot share such a gender identity at opening opposition. No thank you. In that situation, we cannot help that people. Rather, other people will discriminate that person because they don't have such a suitable identity as they say. Therefore, that is more harmful for them. And moreover, they say that the most big problem from their side from opening opposition is that they cannot show why sharing such an identity itself is so important. They say that they have to break such a discrimination, they have to unite each other, and they have to advocate their right itself. But we believe that even such a problem can be solved in our paradigm. Because in our paradigm, nobody cares about such a gender itself. Nobody discriminates by gender. In that situation, for example, like as they say, feminist movement will help help solving that problem. But the point is that the problem itself doesn't exist in our paradigm. Therefore, that argument from the side is not important. Rather, the point is that in our paradigm, problem disappears. But in the paradigm, the problem can be solved in the future. But in our paradigm, the point is that the problem itself doesn't exist. Obviously, our paradigm is much better. And therefore, we will even if take their point, we will in our paradigm that is better. Therefore, we propose.
Can I start?
Yes.
Concept of gender, as in masculinity, femininity, mostly came out of biological features and distinction between male and female. Amount of muscle, physical differences, difference of their brain function, whether female are opt for logical thinking, mathematics, engineering, marketing, or not, right? These biological distinctions and these prejudices are the ones who actually prevented women from entering corporation and political field in 1920 and 1940, right? Because women are considered, because of by the virtue of their biology, that these women, female, are not opt for logical thinking. These women are too emotional. That's why they should not engage in the politics. That's the very reason. This biological feature are the very source of all the discrimination which government side is concerned about. For example, denial of suffrage or entry for corporation or promotion in corporation, right? The concept of gender identity, however, came out only after many women thought that their biological feature should not be a binding force over their own identity. Only after women thought that social imposition of gender based upon biological feature is not appropriate for every single woman in this world. Yes, maybe some women want to rather stay in their house and take care of their children, but many women, social movement realize that this is not necessarily the case. Every single person should have the agency to control their agency. We think gender identity is the moral agency to decide the degree of association between one's identity and masculinity or femininity. So under our paradigm, only under our paradigm, women and men can choose to what extent they want to associate with traditional concept of femininity or not. That's why even women at the same time can be very garish in terms of conversation, but become a likeness, as my partner talked to, for example, become a STEM and enter TIDEC, for example. That's our one. On their paradigm, what will happen is they turn to the ear whether women are denied of their right based upon their biological differences, and that's why this gender identity is extremely important. Two clarifications before starting my class points. First of all, entire opening government failed to engage in the debate because they all talk about masculinity, femininity, as my partner talked to you. Second of all, opening question correctly pointed out feminist movement can, for example, crack down some sort of discrimination, but they had lacks of explicit tie-back between the argument and the motion, because obviously even self-identified man, for example, I can become a feminist, right? Feminist movement is not constructed around gender identity of people. But in my second point, I'm going to tell you how feminist movement or any attempt to crack down the prejudice around biological feature were actually empowered by this gender identity. In other words, we think gender identity is the one who actually disempower the traditional imposition of the biological masculinity based upon biological features. First point, how do people choose their gender identity? So we're not talking about Middle East or where women are extremely severely discriminated and there's no literary concept of gender literary. At the point we recognize this is a debate presumably about whether it's a concept of gender identity. We're talking about countries like liberal democracy to some extent, America, Japan, South Korea, French, Britain, and so on. In these contexts, it's unrealistic to say that even 20 years old adult, university student, cannot recognize but completely brainwashed by their parents and have no opportunity to be exposed to different idea of masculinity and femininity at all. For example, living in a country like Japan, we have already seen a lot of boyish women, for example, right? Women, professional soccer female player, for example. You have seen, for example, male who is cross-dressing. Like there are so many men who looks very cute, who looks like a literary women, right? That's why we now recognize that gender is very fluid concept right now under our paradigm, right? Government we've said, well, this movement takes a lot of time. yes, it is maybe, right? But the burden on the government side here is that in any context, whenever we make a progress toward gender neutralization, they have to support this motion, right? It means that they burden on the government side to prove that whatever we do under a paradigm to allow people to make self-decision about their own gender, they have to erase that gender identity from these people. But second of all, allegation from closing government was that, well, people are brainwashed in terms of their construction process of their gender identity. Fine. First of all, every single gender identity is influenced by external factor. But second of all, look at their paradigm, right? They have never talked about the comparative in this debate, right?
Here.
On their paradigm, girls born under very patriarchy parents have no doubt that all women ought to become a housewife, right? Because these girls internalize the idea that there is no such a thing as gender identity. By the virtue of my biological feature, because of my biological sex, I have to be housewife, right? That's the comparative which they need to engage with in this debate. No, thank you. That's why the best case scenario for their side is literally the status quo. Second point, how this notion of gender identity cracks down every single discrimination based upon biological differences between female and male. Opening government talk about imposition of masculinity and femininity. Closing government also talk about things like that, for example, cooperation and so on, right? That's my introduction, right? In the world where there is no gender identity, women will be forced to become housewife, right? Because these women only women can get pregnancy, and these women only have a breast to feed their own children, for example, right? That's what people know, because by the virtue of their biological sex, female ought to be housewife. There are so many, no thank you, there are so many misogynistic people who show a very bad statistic. For example, on average, females' IQ is less than, for example, male or something like that. These rhetoric be enforced, right? Many men who think that we female are not apt for logical thinking is going to demand for dismissing female workers from executive board or political sphere. Sure.
So what we have said is that people should choose whether they will become housewives or not by looking at their skills and not by their gender sex.
That's why under our paradigm, because people no longer impose the masculinity or femininity based upon their biological sex, people are more likely to look at the personality and ability of these women, right? And that's what ability criteria goes with our side of the house, right? These are the very reason why feminist movement or other movement have been succeeding in terms of progressing their own movement. Because feminist movement have been claiming that you cannot define women's action based upon their biological sex. It should be up to individual women's discretional choice to decide whether they want to become feminine or not. And that's the world which we support in this debate. Finally, transgender. It's shameful that no one in the government side engaged with our analysis about transgender people. Under their paradigm, these transgender people, transgender male, for example, who make up, who wear skirt, we see as very crazy, like psychologically disordered people under their paradigm. You know what? This is what actually happened in 1950 and 1960. They're literally barred from entering any public spaces at university and corporation at all. This is not debate about mere masculinity, femininity, that's gender debate, right? This is debate about gender identity. Reclosing opposition is only relevant, you have to vote for us.